So here's the 5 things that you need to know about the contaminated blood scandal. What we're talking about here is that 30,000 people in Britain were infected by contaminated blood that they'd received from the NHS via a transfusion, maybe after an operation or something like that. People contracted hepatitis C or HIV. And this is a long time ago now. So this is people who had transfusions in the 70s and the 80s. So what, 40, 50 years ago? According to the BBC, 3,000 people have already died as a result of contracting these diseases from infected blood. And they also expect more people to die in the future as a result of the infected blood that they received from the NHS. So how did it happen? Well, basically the NHS bought blood from so-called high-risk donors. An example could be a drug addict who was paid money to donate their blood, and the blood was like imported from the NHS from an American drug user. That, I know it sounds unbelievable, but that actually happened. And according to a report that's just been published, the NHS took, in quotes, unacceptable risks. To make matters worse, it's now known that there was a cover-up within the NHS. So this issue of contaminated blood was widely known and within the NHS, and key documents were destroyed by NHS personnel. So there was a huge cover-up of this scandal. So what are the 5 things that I think you should know about this scandal, and 5 things actually more accurately that you could speak to normies about regarding this scandal? The first thing that you can say to normies about this is that, the defence of, well, this could never have happened, you see, because far too many people would have known about it and would have had to have kept quiet about it, which would have been impossible because there must have been somebody in an organisation as large as the NHS who would have had some morality, and they would have spoken up. So this thing that you said couldn't have happened because, as I say, there would have been just too many people, and somebody would have spoken up. Well, this NHS tainted blood scandal shows that once again this kind of normie defence mechanism just lies in tatters. It's completely invalid, alongside the Manhattan experiment, Jimmy Savile, Hillsborough, time and time again in practice. You can have huge conspiracies that are covered up by millions of people. The idea that it's just too big, there's too many people involved, somebody would have spoken up, it's just laughable, it's completely bogus. And yeah, this is a perfect example once again. So that's something that you should definitely tell normies, is that, ha 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 ha, you say, oh, that could never happen because too many people would have to know and somebody would have spoken up, is bullshit and rubbish. The second thing that you can tell normies about this is that the truth always becomes known in the long run. It's just a matter of time. Now, for me, this one would be best deployed at somebody who works for the NHS, maybe an NHS GP, for example. Do make sure that you tell these people that, yeah, in the short run, it might be possible to deceive people, but in the long run, the truth always becomes known. So there's a very strong incentive for you to always tell the truth, because evil deeds will become known. The third normie myth to explode as a result of this contaminated blood scandal is the myth that NHS doctors and nurses are all angels and that they're wonderful people. The NHS tainted blood scandal proves otherwise. What's been demonstrated by the tainted blood scandal is that NHS doctors and nurses routinely care more about their jobs, salaries and their material creature comforts that are bought with those taxpayer funded salaries than they do about the truth, your health and your freedoms. For 50 years the NHS said that their blood was safe and effective if you needed a blood transfusion. People in the NHS knew what was going on. They must have seen people coming down with hepatitis C and HIV following a transfusion, but en masse and as individuals they took a decision, a personal decision, to keep their mouths shut and to go along with the NHS's public statements. They did that to keep their jobs, their salaries, and to keep those all-important material creature comforts rolling in. An important thing to consider here is the NHS's health protocols. So what NHS doctors and nurses do is that they blindly follow whatever protocol has been set. So they'll treat their patients according to a protocol that's been devised centrally, because they know that if they were to go away from that protocol, then they're going to face the sack. The protocol's not working. They won't speak up about it because they're worried about being sacked, being dismissed for failing to follow a protocol. It doesn't matter that patients have been harmed. That's a secondary matter compared to what they're primarily interested in, which is maintaining their income. The fourth truth bomb for normies that you can get from this NHS tainted blood scandal is that yesterday's conspiracy theories typically become tomorrow's scandals. So for many, many years, there have been conspiracy theorists who've raised the alarm about the prospect of the NHS using tainted blood from drug addicts, and this is not a good thing to do for obvious reasons. It's taking unacceptable risks with patients. But now what's happened is that this kind of conspiracy theory has just become rebranded, and it's now being called a scandal. Again, other examples of what were conspiracy theories that became scandals would be Hillsborough, Midomide, asbestos and Jimmy Savile. So at the moment there's all sorts of conspiracy theories going around about the royal family, but what I'm wondering is, I wonder how long it'll take for those conspiracy theories to become royal scandals. The fifth thing to say to normies about this contaminated blood thing, this story, is that most people in practice are immoral, which is the opposite of the typical normie take. Normies believe that most people are good people, and they would have hidden Jews during World War II, been vehement critics of publicly criticising Nazis in occupied France. They would have been part of the resistance, etc. Truth is that most people are collaborators. And that was proven recently during the Soviet Union period of biomedical fascism. Most normies were absolutely fine going along with the discrimination of their own citizens based on their medical status. You know, the fact that they refused to go along with the medical experiment that we're not allowed to talk about. And again, with this tainted blood scandal, we've got the same pattern emerging. So these people in the NHS, the doctors and nurses, they turned a blind eye to stuff that was going on. And it was inconceivable that they didn't know what was going on. What these people did was that they put their material comforts, their jobs, their egos, their statuses that were, you know, I'm a doctor. They put all of that, the mini-me, Satanism, let's call it what it is, a preoccupation with self. They put all of that above any notion of objective, God-given morality. So we can reject utterly this notion that most people are good and moral and will do the right thing. Some other random thoughts about all of this. First one is, you know, and this isn't probably something you would say to normies, these points, but just for us. So first one is, they love a distraction, don't they? A distraction from what? Well, the first thing is the absolute carnage that's being created by the medical experiment. The results are coming in. Unfortunately, things seem to be getting worse and worse for those that consented to the medical experiment. And then something else that I thought about is, it's not just a distraction, it's also a cover story. So the medical experiment typically causes blood-related problems. So you need a cover story, don't you, for those blood-related problems. So what better way of covering it up than saying, well, the problem that you've got was down to a blood transfusion that you had, or the reason why the number of people who have got all sorts of health conditions, you see, is down to this NHS blood contamination scandal. So that's all that I want to say today from hot and sunny Finland. So God bless.